The Fed just got out of their second quarter meeting of 2025, and to little to no surprise for a lot of folks, they left rates unchanged. Their target interest rate is still between 4.25% and 4.5%. And they've left this rate unchanged since the wintertime of 2024. Now, if you've been watching my videos since that time frame back in 2024, you'll remember that we talked a lot about interest rates, and that's been a big topic of conversation for a long time now. And what I want you to remember is that we said the Fed was really, really aggressive with their interest rate cut. They lowered it by an entire percentage point, which I personally was very surprised about. Not that I was upset about it, but I was just very surprised that they were so aggressive with the rate cut. And I predicted that the Fed this year was going to have very little wiggle room to change the rates if they wanted to because of their level of aggressiveness last year. And that's exactly what we're experiencing this year. The Fed has stated that because of all the uncertainty around tariffs, and tariffs are not going to be a long-term game changer for markets. They're not going to raise economies out of poverty. They're not going to take wealthy economies and push them into a recession. Maybe in extreme cases, sure, if you want to get a little crazy, but a lot of the tariffs that President Trump wants to implement, we're not here to agree or disagree whether they're right or wrong. We're just here to talk about the facts, right? And President Trump has been somewhat of a loose cannon in regard to the tariff policies that he wants to implement. We saw back in March and April that he was going to implement these crazy tariffs, and in some instances, he did implement very high tariffs. But ultimately, he ended up backing off a lot of them, and he gave a 90-day extension for most of his tariff policies. And the Fed is aware of this, right? And they know that because of some of the uncertainty around President Trump and his decision-making regarding tariffs, they're just a little uneasy. Again, they don't have a lot of wiggle room to move rates to begin with, and because they don't have a lot of wiggle room, they're being overly cautious about when the right time is to actually lower rates. At this point, most investors and experts are predicting that the Fed will lower rates probably in the fall, so think third quarter 2025. This is no guarantee, of course, but there is definitely some internal conversations with the Fed. Actually, there was some disagreement about keeping the Fed rate steady during this meeting. So I think that there's a much higher chance the Fed lowers rates. I don't think it'll be a crazy amount like last year, probably maybe 0.25% or 0.5%, but you never know with the Fed, right? So thank you for tuning into today's video, and we'll touch base with everyone next week.